Well, hello and good evening to all of you who are joining us. It's Friday. It's Friday. Good evening. Good evening to you if you're joining us from Guyana. And of course, if you're joining us from outside of Guyana, it varies. Good evening to those of you in the Caribbean, in North America, and particularly those on the East Coast. Good evening to you. Good night and good morning to those of you coming to us from Europe, our friends in the United Kingdom, Great Britain, England. Um, Good morning to you and welcome to this evening's edition of Politics 101. Today's edition of Politics 101. It's Friday. It's Friday. It's, of course, been yet another busy week politically. Welcome all of you. As you know, we saw the news this week, huh? We saw the news this week. There's the fact-finding mission in Guyana, and the government of Guyana refusing to meet with the fact-finding mission. Our understanding is that the mission went ahead and did its work, spoke to Guyanese, and of course, they will make their determination after putting all of the evidence together. The government did not meet with the fact-finding mission. Obviously, they have something to hide, or they're guilty. I think the ship is sinking. The PPP ship is sinking. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. Good evening to all of you. We got the bad news this week that Guyana is leading the region in malnutrition. We have the most underweight babies being born. Woo. All this contradiction, you know. We are the fastest growing economy in the hemisphere, fastest growing economy, perhaps one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing economy in the world. Poverty is at 40-odd%. And now malnutrition. The woes are there. They vary, but they're all the same. Good evening to all of you who are joining us. If you're joining us from Canada, good evening. We're going to have Dr. Vincent Adams here tonight, and we are going to be talking about some of the issues that have arisen during the course of the week. But I think the ship is sinking makes me remember that that song, that calypso of, wow, it's almost 40 years ago by Gypsy. Captain, the ship is sinking. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it? Hey, I think we have to abandon ship. The captain not steering the ship properly. Good evening to all of you. Captain, the ship is sinking. Please share the link, and we're going to get going in a couple of minutes because we're expecting Dr. Vincent Adams here this evening. It's Friday evening. Last Friday, we had Dr. Mark Horton, and we talked about Venezuela. And Dr. Vincent Adams is back this week. So please share the link and let's get going with tonight's program. Captain, the ship is sinking. Captain, the ship is sinking.
Location 7 miles off the coast of Venezuela. SOS, lady, help! The Trinidad, a luxury liner, sailing the Caribbean Sea. We got no captain named Eric Williams. For years, it's old and free. But sadly, Eric Williams passed away. The ship is more than a day. Someone turned the bridge over to a captain named Chambers. My blood crawled, things started to fall. Hold me hand when I said I fall. When they tell me, Captain, the ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we get some almost empty, no electricity. We all pressure in the low. Shall we abandon that ship or shall we stay on it? And very slow, we don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Whoa, oh yeah, oh my. You know, boy. The Trinidad, oh, she was a beauty with words that few surpassed. In her day, she sailed majestically. There were few in her class. Faithfully, she put with her sailors need. Some were overpowered by greed, so they built and slow. Some took Bible and go. Oh, she looked dull, she's like a lull. She could barely sit on her heart. What they tell me? The ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we get that pollution, we know electricity. We all pressure we don't know. Shall we abandon that ship or shall we stay on it? I'm very sure we don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Oh yeah. The Trinidad, in her day of sailing, she was a friend, a true friend to one and all. She never once ever hesitated to answer all SOS calls. And yes, what she always did her best to help all those in distress. Now it's so sad to see she's in difficulty. Though she cheer, some of them cheer, and sarcastic and in the air. When I tell me, she was singing. What I say? Oh yeah, we got that almost empty, no electricity. We all pressure in the low. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it? I'm very slow. We don't know. Captain, you tell us what to do.
Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it?
Who should we blame for doing her wrong? Now please remember warning you from the years she had set through. When the keys to your fault, we know who's at fault. It's up to you and up to me to make her way to move up. She's thinking slowly. She is thinking. Oh yes, we got that almost empty, no electricity. We all pressure in the low. Shall we abandon that ship or shall we stay on it? I'm just looking. I don't know. That's when you tell me what to do. I don't know. You tell me what to do. I don't know. You tell me what to do. I don't know. Listen here. Every down. Yeah. When in Grenada, I always feel fine. I want to talk, to a friend of mine. Anytime we all meet on any street, I want you to take this message to Keith. Tell him I'm very sure he get a mandate like never before. But tell me what's next. Don't get the people vexed. Out of the way, I say, otherwise you will have to pay when they say, Captain, the ship is sinking. If they tell him, Captain, the seas are wrong. We get some almost every no electricity. We all pressure really low. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it? I'm very slow. We don't know. We don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. We don't know. We don't know. Captain, you can tell me that. You know, tonight I was supposed to be in Toronto, and I said I wouldn't trade this for the world, not even for the money. And I decided to come and celebrate with my friend. It's all about it, ladies and gentlemen. And I want you as Grenadian people to cherish what you have. Because one of these days, you will have it no more. Show Wizard how much you love him. Give him a nice round of applause again. Happy 50th, my brother. And may God continue blessing you to see me anymore. I want to thank you very much for being such a wonderful audience. God bless you. We don't know, Captain, we don't know. We don't know, we don't know, Captain. We don't know, Captain, you tell me what to do. Oh, oh, oh yeah. The Trinidad, in her day of sailing, she was a friend, a true friend to one and all. She never once ever hesitated to answer all SOS calls. And yes, what she always did her best to help all those in distress. Now it's so sad to see she's in difficulty. Though she can cheer, some of them cheer, and sarcastically declare, when I tell you, she was singing. What I say? Oh yes, we got that almost empty, no electricity. We all pressure in the low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it? I'm very slow. We don't know. Captain, you tell us what to do. Oh. Now there's a lot of fingers pointed. Suspicion keeps running strong. Who's to be blamed for all her failures? Who should we blame for doing her wrong? Now please remember I'm warning you, from the years she had to step through, when the keys to your vault, we know who's at fault. It's up to you, and up to me, to make her worry, to move on. She's thinking slowly. The ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are up. Oh yes, we got that almost empty, no electricity. The oil pressure really low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it? I'm just I don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. I don't know. You tell me what to do. I don't know. You tell me what to do. I don't know. Listen here. Take it down. Yeah. When in Grenada, I always feel fine. I want to talk to a friend of mine. Anytime we all meet on any street, I want you to take this message to Keith. Tell him I'm very sure he get a mandate like never before. But tell me what's next. Don't get the people vexed. Out of the way, I say, otherwise you will have to pay when they say, Captain, the ship is sinking. If they tell him, Captain.
Yeah, shall we abandon ship? Or shall we stay on it? Captain, the ship is sinking. I abandoned ship long, not staying on it because the ship is sinking. Captain, the ship is sinking. Oh, one of those calypsos that can fit any country in our Caribbean. It certainly fits Guyana because Guyana is now the luxury liner. Plenty money sailing majestically. Plenty money, but plenty malnutrition. Plenty poverty. Plenty corruption. Plenty bad education. Captain, the ship is sinking. Don't get the people vexed because they're going to sink the ship. Jack Dio and Ali, the ship is sinking. The ship is sinking. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Politics 101. The ship is sinking. The ship is sinking because those who are navigating the ship don't know one damn thing about navigation. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Politics 101 on a Friday night. Dr. Vincent Adams is here and we're going to get rolling now. The ship is sinking. Plenty blackout. In the richest economy in the hemisphere, the ship is sinking. Plenty malnutrition, the ship is sinking. The food price in the market, the ship is sinking. Good evening. How you doing, my friend? My brother Albert Morgan out there in the quarantine union area. The wonderful people in that part of the world, that part of Guyana. Welcome to Politics 101. Once we keep doing what we are doing, the ship is sinking. Venezuela is up in the ante, and our government is not understanding the seriousness of what is happening. The ship is sinking. We need a new captain. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it? Abandon ship. Can't stay on it because you're going down with it. Those who want to stay on it, they're going to go down with it. But we know what we're doing. We're not going down on it. The ship is sinking. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Politics 101. It's a Friday night. It's a Friday night. And we are going to be talking the issue with Dr. Vincent Adams as soon as he's ready for us. I don't think he's quite ready yet. He thought it was 7 o'clock Eastern time. You know, when you're in America, the time changes. Our time in Guyana doesn't change. The ship is sinking. The ship is sinking. Captain, shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it? No, don't stay on it. Jump ship. Because those who steer in the ship don't know nothing about steering. That is why they couldn't meet with the fact-finding mission. That's why they couldn't meet. Move. Let them move out of the way. But you know how tyrants go. They don't move out of the way. You got to move them out of the way. And that's what we're on. Good evening to all of you wonderful people. I see my brother Leroy Nelson. I haven't seen him for a long time, but it's good to see him and good to know that he's still with us. My sister Lynette Greenwood, Chinese from Annandale. Congo people, Congo say, move apart, move apart. Hey, Captain, the ship is sinking. And when the ship is sinking, our job is to push it faster so it sink faster. But jump off first. Jump off first. Jump off first. Welcome to Politics 101 on this Friday night. And as I said, we're going to be chatting tonight on the various issues of the day. I think Dr. Adams is ready for us. Dr. Vincent Adams, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Dr. Hines. I'm still technically challenged here.
Yes.
It was showing me that I was waiting backstage and I don't know what happened. But anyway, it's a pleasure again. Friday night is our night, and I look forward to it. So welcome to our wonderful audience, and we're ready to go here. I enjoyed the music. The ship is sinking, and the ship only sinks for one reason: when it doesn't have a captain.
Here you go.
And that is the problem that we're facing here today. We do not have a captain, and so but of course we can still have control if the people still have control, because the captain works for the people, and all they've got to do is get rid of the captain, get a new captain.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Let the old captain go. My brother, there is a fact-finding mission in Guyana
Yep.
coming from the United States of America, and they've been making the rounds this past week. Our government, in its infinite unwisdom, decided that it was not going to meet with this fact-finding mission. Mark you, a couple of weeks ago, another mission from the United States, some state senators from New York, they were there. Then this very week, some Canadian government people, I think they're members of parliament, they were there, they met with them. But these brothers and sisters, African Americans from the United States of America, most of them from the South, where the experience of denial has been similar to what we experience in Guyana. They decide they're not going to meet with those people. Is it a case where they believe those people get cocoa-bear? The others are right, but that those who are dark, the darkest of us, coming from the bosom of the old Confederacy, they get cocoa-bear?
I hear that word for a long time. Dr. Hines. I mean, maybe these few words may tell the story here. If you look at the makeup of the different fact-finding teams, I think that the previous one that they met with, it was led, or it had, one of the members of that was a lady by the name of Miss Prasad.
Yes, sir.
So maybe maybe that probably is that kind of a strategy, or that is lacking.
And you have license to say it because you
That
are half Passad.
that's right. Here, no, I'm half Munsami. No, but it's interesting. I think it's very interesting, and it begs the question, and maybe the future fact finding missions ought to learn from it, and make sure we've got those type of names on the list.
Yes. But my brother, these people have no shame. Here are people who are talking about one Guyana. Here are people who begging Mr. Norton to join with them to stand as one Guyana against Venezuela. Here are people who are saying that there is no discrimination in Guyana, yet in meeting with fact-finding missions, they are discriminating against people who look like the people that they're charged with discriminating within Guyana. These people have no shame.
No, that's it, and it's across the board. It's their modus operandi, and they believe even. And the thing is, though, Dr. Hines, is it's it's not a case where this government has 60% of the seats in parliament, or 60% of the votes, or 70% of the votes. You could understand that you really don't care a damn about the opposition. Both parties essentially have 50% of the votes of the country. So they're holding on by a very thin thread. So the arrogance is unbelievable. It's the arrogance that is unbelievable. And in their behavior, they really do not care a damn, and operating as if they've got 70% of the support. It's shameless. It's arrogant, and but I guess we have to trust the people, and with reasonableness, because I think they've started to overdo it already, and I don't think that the arrogance is not allowing them to see that they're overdoing it. And I'm sure that there's there's that even if it's a small slice of the population who are seeing it. I mean, I hear it. I know that you hear it, and I hear it all the time with people who complain, who voted for the party to get into power, and now they're even admitting that's a vote that they've regretted because of the blatant and barefaced behavior. Because remember now, Dr. Hines, poverty does not have racial barriers.
There you go.
Okay? And a lot of people were suffering in Guyana are not only black folks, a lot of Indians. And I always go back to those cane cutters. Those cane cutters, you remember the situation that they're in, that are struggling with what? $29,000 per month take home, and that type of thing. So those are the people, a lot of them. And when they even tried, these are people who voted 100% for the PPP, and when they just wanted to meet with the president and vice president, they came all the way to Georgetown, and they just ignored them. The same thing happened at Jetty, where those people who are predominantly, on West Damar, predominantly the party supporters, and then they go bulldoze their homes and everything so the Texan could have their shore bases, etc. So they are, I think their arrogance is leading them to overstep their bounds. And I really do have confidence, as long as people like yourself and the rest of the folks keep them informed, I think they're going to understand, and they're reasonable people. And I think they're going to pay a price. I really do believe they're going to pay a price.
They are going to pay a price, and they are paying a price, because the very fact that they cannot meet with a fact-finding mission itself is an indictment of the government. If you are large and in charge and you have control, you have nothing to hide, you meet with the people and present your evidence to them. As you were saying to us, we must present evidence. Well, the people have come to Guyana, and these people were in Guyana 2 years ago, Doc.
Yes, yes, yes.
And they met with the government, and the government was very happy to meet with them, wine them and dine them at State House, and so on. 2 years later, the same people come back, and they don't want to see these people. What has changed in 2 years? That is the billion-dollar question. What has changed in 2 years? A lot. has changed in 2 years. One of the things that has now come to our attention is that we are the most malnourished country in the Caribbean region. Now, facts, fact finding. We have the fastest growing economy in the English speaking Caribbean. We have more money than any other country in the English speaking Caribbean.
Yep.
And we just found out that we have more malnourishment than the rest of the English speaking Caribbean. Doctor, you went to school. I drop out. Explain to us what's happening there. The contradiction, is it?
Oh, absolutely. And even before I go there, because I want to reemphasize something that you said there, you know, I mean, if I am running a country, running anything, and I'm being accused of things that I am saying it's not true. I've got all this confidence. I say, hey, absolutely, there is no racism or anything or biases based upon race in my country. I would welcome anybody to come in if I don't have anything to hide to prove my point. I will use it as an opportunity, Doc. I don't care. Come, here's my evidence. I'm gonna, to really vindicate myself. I would love to get those opportunities. So again, what is there to hide? Why? Why? What is there to hide? So that's the big question. But going back in terms of the ship sinking, and there's certain metric in terms of performance. A lot of times you can't feel and touch stuff, or you're making decisions in your boardroom or in your offices, and there are certain things that you look for in terms of performance and progress that you're making. And one of the biggest metric in terms of the performance of a country or country's future development is your kids. If remember the days, Dr. Hines, you remember the days when and you talk about going to school. Yes, I did go to school at Christian Moore in the alleys of Christian Moore Government School, one of the more poverty stricken areas in the country. But every single day we had biscuits with milk and a cod liver oil capsule. And it's no coincidence. At the same time, in that era, Guyana was ranked as the number one. It was the most literate country in that entire hemisphere. That is no coincidence. So now, when you flip to today, and in those days, of course, there was not a drop of oil. We were That was not even in our dreams to have oil. There was no money, poor, but the government used to provide those biscuits on a daily basis, the milk on a daily basis, and those cod liver oil capsules. I remember them, some big capsules. Sometimes you never even used to want to drink it because if you bite it, it wasn't a good taste. It was a rank kind of a taste. So, and again, it correlated to us being run, having we were the most literate country on the planet, in that hemisphere. So here's what we have: all of the money that we're talking about, the richest economy in the world right now based on our GDP, and we are ranked as the worst when it comes to child malnutrition in the entire Caribbean and Latin America area. Let me give you some stats here, which would kind of, I'm sure it will shock the listeners. We have five times the malnutrition rate according to that index, 5 times the average of the entire Latin American Caribbean area. We have, listen to this part here that is going to shock a lot of people. You know Haiti, right? And Haiti, as you know, it has been perennially ranked as the poorest country in this hemisphere, among the poorest country in the world. Would you believe that we are twice as bad as Haiti when it comes to malnourished kids? Haiti. So, but the other thing is, if the kids are not feeding, because this crosses everything in terms of development in the country. Because you don't have to be a doctor or a nutritionist to know, if you're malnourished, you will not learn. You cannot learn in school if you're malnourished. So here we have an entire generation, or even many generations to come, where we're going to have malnourished kids. They cannot absorb the education that they got, from poor schools where you and I went to school. They cannot do anything. So you're going to have generations of kids now. Your entire economy, your future economy is dependent upon these kids, because again, education is the number one attractor of investments into any country. It's not infrastructure, it is education. So here you've got a country with the worst education, because basically it's worse health, which drives the worst education, which means you're not going to get any investment in your country. Nobody's going to come to your country. So that is what is happening here. And what was interesting, you would think, Dr. Hines and listeners, that when the story broke, and by the way, let us make it clear to the listeners, this information here did not come from me. It did not come from you. It did not come from Mr. Norton. It did not come from Mr. Ramjatan. Okay, this came from UNICEF, the United Nations Children Fund. It came from the WHO, World Health Organization, and it came from the World Bank. Nothing could be more legitimate than that combination of sources. So that's where it came from. So if I was, we talking about captain on a ship. If I am leading a country and something like this hits me, this here would now become my biggest priority, because this here is the future of the nation. And would you believe, the vice president, he had his press conference and he's always showing up with these thick stack of paper clippings that he goes through, and he views them all, all comers. He just views everybody out. So I'm listening to the conference, and I'm expecting now that he's going to pull out a paper with this headline that says, that talks about, because this here now has, to me, would become not a single word, not a single word. So that is why this is so important for us to bring this to the attention of folks, so that they could hold people like the government in office, and hold them accountable. And I want to close with this statement. How could the leaders of a country with the fastest growing economy in the world be so heartless and numbed to the dire sufferings of over half of its population that survive on less than $5.50 per day, Dr. Hines, foodless, homeless, while 1%, maybe 5% of their friends, families, and favorites own 90% or 95% of the nation's entire wealth. That's that's where their motive is. It's for their friends and families and favorites to have all the riches of the nation, and don't care a damn about those infants that is the future of this nation. And that's, so people need to understand that, because my kids are grown. I'm sure your kids are grown. Half of our population, Guyana, is below the age of 26. So they're the ones who should be concerned about their kids and their families and their generation. So this is the kind of information they need to understand. It's impacting them directly. I don't care whether you're Indian, black, Portuguese, white. It's impacting you. And these are the decisions that are being made by the current administration, and they're ducking from it. They're not even addressing it. This should have been a priority. It doesn't matter. They just push it aside as if it doesn't matter, which means that you and your kids don't matter. So that's where we are.
That's where we are. And I look, let me editorialize here before I move on to the next topic, my brother. I remember during the recent local government campaign, a certain ex-national cricketer who is on the PPP bandwagon. I remember hearing him, watching that boy say, they tell me I drinking soup, but the soup sweet. And I looked at this chap and I said, here is somebody who needs to set an example for young people. And look at the lawlessness. And at a certain level, you felt a little bit helpless because there's no reasoning you can't reason with a mind like that. And there are lots of people, Indians and black people, and I suspect Amerindians, poor like all of us, who say, when the PPP in power, money running. There's that myth that we have signed on to, money running. And how can you tell poor people, look, if money running, don't look for it. Don't look for it. But I want to say to those people believe money running, malnutrition running too, poverty running too. Bob Marley saying in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. In the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. And Dick Gregory would say, what kind of fool is you to believe a couple $1,000 is going to change the material condition of your sisters and your brothers and your mothers and your aunties them. Yes, you get some soup, but in the abundance of soup, the fool is thirsty. And I want to say to my fellow Guyanese, time is longer than twine. Time is longer than twine. The chickens are coming home to roost every day. Every day. Every day. Now we are learning how malnourished we are. How malnourished as a society we are. All those who are drinking the soup, they're watching malnourished babies coming into this world. Yes, my brother. Yes, Monty, rat race. Serious anti-imperialist song. Rasta no work for no CIA. Serious in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. The fool is thirsty. And it is going to take, unfortunately, these stark truths about our reality to bring home to some of our people the cesspit that Guyana has descended into. I was a little boy. I used to like radio. And I remember hearing a man named Wilfred David. I later come to know him very well. He lives in Washington, D.C. As a professor at Howard University. He's from Belladrum, El Dorado. And I remember hearing Wilfred says, there can be growth without development. A little boy, 13, 14 years. Couldn't grasp. I know he was saying something important. I know what is growth, and I think I knew something about development. But later on, I understand the profundity of what that brother was saying. And today, Wilfred is an old man now. He must be throwing back and laughing. Because all the growth that we are experiencing, and let's not fool ourselves, we are experiencing growth. Plenty money. But if Walter Rodney were alive today, he might have wanted to write a new book. How oil and gas under the PPP is underdeveloping Guyana. Because that's what we're seeing. It is not the oil and gas that is underdeveloping us. It is how the PPP is managing the oil and gas. Whether it is compromising our environment, when it is compromising the safety of our people, whether it is giving away to Exxon what it should not give away, or whether what it is getting, it is spending recklessly, worse than a drunken sailor. Because I think even a drunken sailor would not be spending money as reckless as these kinds of chaps. I grew up in a village hearing Freddie Bandula come from Bush, and he take a $5 bill and light it for look for dollar bill. But this government is taking $1 billion and lighting it to look for $1 million. Make Freddie Bandula look like a Sunday school boy. This government is reckless and it's taking Guyana down. And we as a people have a duty to stop it. To stop it. To stop it. One of us will drink some soup. But you see what that soup is producing? Malnourished babies. Malnourished babies. Mark our words. Good evening, Linda Mingo. Good evening, Roy Braffett. Good evening, Joseph Caleb. Wonderful people. Thanks for joining us. We are part of a rescue mission. Rescuing our country. Rescuing our country at a point in time when the gods have more than smiled upon us and have visited us with opportunities to correct a lot of the social and economic malaise that we have brought with us from the plantation right through the barricades under the indentureship system to the present. And we have a government that is so careless, that is so uncaring. As my brother said, Jack Dio is going to hold a 2-hour press conference and cannot comment on the malnutrition that is abroad in our country. These people are not fit to govern. They are not fit to govern. My brother, you know, when the coalition...
Before we go into the next question, because you touched on some things there that triggered something that I think that is related to something that I think some facts that the folks ought to know. You talk about, well, let's go back to even the food. It's not a case where they're hiding things either as to how they want to operate. The vice president, and go back, I can't remember, maybe 4 or 5 press conferences ago on a Thursday evening, the vice president himself says twice, I almost fell out of my chair the first time I heard it, and I thought it must have been a slip of the tongue. He mentioned it again. You know what he said? That all the opposition is talking about is feeding the people. That's what he said. He berated the opposition. It was in reference to a question concerning spending money on infrastructure. So he is saying, which is exactly in line with our conversation, he's saying, no, that's all the opposition wants to talk about is about feeding people. What could be more basic? So this conversation here about malnutrition and feeding poor people falls in line with exactly how they are governing this country, Dr. Hines. Now, the other part that you mentioned there, and it's just fresh in my mind because I was on another program last night talking about the National Resource Fund and the Sovereign Wealth Fund. In terms of the reckless spending that you were talking about, it's not only reckless, it's stupid, because in our kitchen table economy, that in economics that we talk about in terms of you get your little few bucks in your paycheck every Friday or whenever, and you got to try and make ends meet. You get to the kitchen table and you try to figure it out. That's not how they operate. Now, how could we be borrowing these hundreds of millions and billions of dollars at nobody knows at what interest rate? Some people say it's 10%, some people say it's 12, some people go as high as 20% we ping. And at the same time, oh, we've got over $2 billion. We collected over $2 billion in the oil fund that is sitting there making about, you know how much money? Guess what's the interest rate we're being paid for that fund over the life of that fund? 1.36%. So listen to this, folks. Common sense. You're making 1.3% on your money, but you're borrowing for, let's say, 10%, which means you're losing, oh, what, close to 8% or so. I mean, that is stupidity. None of us would ever do that with you make 1.3% and borrow at a much higher rate when you've got the money sitting in the bank. It doesn't make any sense, Dr. Hines. So that's the kind of recklessness. They would not have done that, Dr. Hines and audience, had it been money out of their pocket.
Yeah.
They would not have done that. They
Yeah.
would not have done that. And you touch on it again in terms of, it's not the amount of oil you have, it's how you manage and govern that oil.
Yes.
Look at the countries. There are many countries um, that have, look at Venezuela has many more times, over 30 times the amount of oil that we have, and they've got the highest, the highest reserves, over 300 billion barrels. And look where Venezuela is. Look at Nigeria.
Yes.
Look at the whole bunch of other countries in Africa, and then compare that to countries like Norway. Don't even have close the amount of oil that these countries have. But guess what? Norway has oil has made them very rich. Oil has made even the folks in the Middle East very rich. And you know why? Because they don't play around when it comes to corruption and those type of things. Totally, they hold you accountable. I remember even when I was with American Oil Company, Amoco, which was the sister company to Aramco, in that runs the Saudi Arabian, operations. And we used to always assign people to go to Saudi Arabia. And none of us wanted to go to Saudi Arabia because it was so strict. It didn't matter whether you come from the United States or whether you work for Amoco or not. If they caught you drinking a beer of alcohol, or they put you in jail. So nobody, they're very strict. It doesn't matter. In Guyana now, Exxon and the foreigners are running the country. That's the big difference because of corruption and everything else. That is the big difference. While some will flourish with all of the oil and some will not. So that's again, that's the situation.
That's the situation. And for those of you who are asking about Freddie Bandula was an old boxing bushman. He's a legend in a boxing story. I think the Wilmans from boxing back down side are descendants of Freddie Bandula, the old bushman, and he's immortalizing song Freddie Bandula, Dula. Freddie Bandula, King of Santa P. He was a bad man, but Freddie Bandula, before he take the $5 and light it for look for dollar, he feed the family first. He used to feed his family. That's why he's immortalized. Freddie Bandula, the king of Santa P. And this government here doesn't even have 1/10 of the head of Freddie Bandula, because Freddie Bandula would not take $1 billion and light it afire. And that's what this government is doing. It's taking the money and it is giving it away to his friends and his family. That is what I mean by lighting $1 billion. What we call them blowing it out. They're blowing it out. And that's what they are using our money for. That's why we got to be dread, and we got to be dreaded than the dread. We got to be dreaded than the dread. I make no mistake that David Hines and them, that is rev up people. Yes, I want to rev you all up. Because if you don't rev up, then they are going to say to the world, all is well in Guyana. All is not well in Guyana. All cannot be well in Guyana when we have that kind of malnutrition rate in our country. It is, oh my goodness. My brother, I am not into this business that the coalition, they do better than this government and so on. I don't get into that kind of discourse. I'm not saying there's not a place for it, but that ain't my cup of tea. However, I know when the coalition they try to right size the sugar thing, they didn't take into consideration, in my estimation, the racial blowback. I think that was the mistake. Not the economics of what they were doing.
Yes.
It was the sociology of what they were doing. And I live to see that Jack Dio and them were reinstalled into power, and they come back and admit, not in so many words, that the coalition was right. They know that sugar is not sustainable. They are subsidizing it, but very quietly, they are retraining sugar workers to go into other aspects of the economy, vindicating what the coalition was doing. And they will never give credit to the coalition. That is why coalition people have to say, but wait a minute, we might have screwed up in some regards, but we did get some things right. And as we listen to Jack Dio the other day, we notice him taking credit for the capping stock on equipment in the oil and gas industry and other things he was taking credit for that were implemented under the coalition. Under the coalition. And he didn't say these were things that were done by the coalition. He's talking about these things as if they did these things. Speak to that for us.
Well, and for full disclosure to Dr. Hines, and the folks would know, and even Jack Leo and them would know that even when I was working for the coalition, I used to be out there publicly criticizing the government, and I never had any blowback from the president or anybody. Um, at the EPA, I was allowed to do my thing as long as it was the right thing to do, and I think the maybe if there is something as a mistake that the coalition did was to not play the politics. They thought they were doing the right thing for the sugar industry. They look at the economics. This wasn't work. They were going to retrain the workers without considering the political blowback.
Yeah.
So, and now that the PNs, well, at the time the PP people probably wasn't even smart enough to recognize the economics and all those type of things. But now it's facing them right in the head, and like you said, right in the face. Like you said, they quietly, which is the way that they operate, they're quietly pulling back and doing their thing, retraining folks, doing exactly the same thing that the coalition had intended to do. But they're doing it quietly. It's a reality that is hitting them. Now, and I listen to both the vice president. First of all, the vice president, he was coming out every week and answering questions. So he was pressured into putting up his Minister Barrett on show also this week. So both of them know. I mean, it. Let me tell you, these guys, they're basically a disgrace. Listening to them, it's embarrassing. Watching them, it's a lot of times. Guess what? They spend their time, especially the vice president, cussing out folks and abusing out, and even insulting the reporters when they ask him basic questions. So now they're asking and in today's Culture News, they made a list of all the questions that I think it was like 9 questions where they did not even address. Now their trick now is when they ask the vice president the question, he said, "Did you ask the minister the question?" So that's their trickery now. As why that's how we beginning to believe that he's. And then when you ask the minister, he's saying, well, the vice president already answered that. So here's a couple of basic questions that was asked. Of course, the whole thing about the full liability coverage, the parent company guarantee to cover all spills that exist. Whoever is the company, Exxon, must cover all spills. And you remember that was put in place when I was at the EPA. We said because before I arrived there, we had this thing where the company was said that they were self-insured, except that the company was an Exxon. The company is their subsidiary that is running the show, which is SO Exploration Ghana Limited, that had no assets whatsoever because it was a newly formed company, and they're the ones who sign all the permits and everything. So they didn't have any assets. And I said, no, you've got to go back. I want a document that says the parent company, Exxon, and the two other parent companies have to sign a guarantee saying that any spill that occurs, we will be responsible for every, no, the words were any and all costs. They agreed to it. And then they sent me on leave in August of 2020 because I wasn't going to sign any more permits allowing Exxon to operate. And they knew it. So we were close to the document, getting the final document. They sent me and leave in August. They went ahead and signed it in September and got rid of the parent company guarantee. So that is how it ended up in the courts. And of course, I had already put the language into the permit that they couldn't escape it. And that was what before Judge Kissoon, why Judge Kissoon was so, that's why he blasted them so much in his ruling. So the question came up again with the new developments, with the new project that is going to be coming on board and outside of the Stabrook block with the Kanji. So the question came up as to, are we going to get full liability coverage? And the guy dodged and weave. It was a simple question. He said that, we've been dealing with this question forever. Of course, it has to be because the whole language was intended for every permit. It wasn't for one permit and for one operation. So it should have been. But of course, they appealed that decision. The government went with Exxon to appeal the decision against its own people. And then, so he decided to dodge it now by coming up with the most foolish answer that I've ever got, especially for a minister who's talking to the people. It's either through ignorance or it's a deliberate disinformation of its people. He comes up with it. Well, we've got a cap in stock. A cap in stock has nothing to do with coverage of with liability coverage if you get a spill. Let me tell the audience what a capping stock is. After the Macondo spill, the BP spill in the Gulf, when was that? Going several years back, when we had the whole Caribbean washed away with oil.
Right, right,
Because of that, because you remember, oil flowed for 8 to 9 days, and it couldn't stop the well because of the pressure.
right.
So what we did, well, when I say we, I mean the industry, they developed this new piece of equipment that is called a capping stock. It's between 50 and 100 tons. And what you do, you bring it and you put it on top of the well. It's a lid to shut off that flow. Well, so guess who were the ones who told Exxon we must have one? It was myself for the EPA and Dr. Bino for the Department of Energy. He had the Department of Energy. When Exxon, but of course now remember now, because of that purpose, you've got to get it there as fast as possible. So we told Exxon came in with a proposal to get it there in 20 days. We said absolutely not. We worked with them until they got it down to 5 days. And we got it down to 5 days because it's the closest place was South Trinidad, and they had better facilities and deep harbor and stuff. South Trinidad, they can get it to us to the ship in 5 days. We couldn't bring it to Guyana because we did not have the kind of deep harbors and everything else for them to come in. So the logistics. So we told them in the meantime they need to make arrangements somehow where we can get it out of Guyana. Because if we had put it in Guyana, it probably would have been closer to the 20 days. So we decided to let it be deployed from Trinidad. 5 days. We put the 5 days into the Payara permit, and into that Payara permit, when we wrote the Payara permit, of course, it would take several years for you to even start operation. So we put in that Payara permit also, even though it's 5 days, please, we expect a study, I think it's in 30 days or 90 days, for you to show us why you cannot get it down to 3 days. Because remember again, the whole purpose is to get it there as fast as possible to stop the flow. Do you know what they did secretly here? This permit that was signed in September of 2020. Do you know what they did in June? Normally, when you change a permit, you go out and you advertise it in the newspapers, tell everybody we're changing this. I just stumbled upon them secretly changing that permit June of this year to remove, to triple that 3 days to 9 days, bringing it out of Guyana. And now they're bragging that their initiative was with this capping stock that we never had before, nobody ever had in the Caribbean, and it's now coming out of Guyana. Who cares where it comes out of? Like I said, we were putting it out of Trinidad to cut down on them. Let's make sure we
Mhm.
have them. So now they've tripled it. They've callously tripled it from 3 to 9 days to put at risk an extra 6 days of oil just flowing if we have a spill. So that's what this guy is bragging about and making it sound as if it's their invention. Heck, that was myself and Dr. Bino who pushed Exxon to get that equipment and cut them down right down to trees. On top of that, Dr. Hines, in the same permit, you know what they we had in that permit also, that thou shalt not dump any produced water into that ocean. The produced water is 3 times as hot as the ocean. It contains a bunch of toxicity, mercury, lead, everything, just name it. It has a bunch of oil in it as they dump it. It has radioactivity in it. And every standard practice says you should re-inject it back into the reservoir. They remove that to allow the dumping. That's another thing that they remove. They remove the flaring. We said you cannot flare. We give you 48 hours to flare at startup because you got to check out the system and gas might be in the system. 48 hours, which is the United States standard, by the way. Do you know what they went and did? They changed that same secret permit that they changed. They increased the free period to 60 days, meaning for increasing it from the 2 days we had to 60 days. And then you could even go beyond the 60 days and flare as much as you want as long as you pay this flimsy little fee for flaring. So those are the kinds of things that they're doing with this whole capping stock and bragging about it as if. And then the other thing, here's another foolishness. Um, the guy even got so brave as to invite the media to come in and see the technology that they have for monitoring spills. Nobody monitoring in the environmental world is not to monitor after you have a spill. Monitoring means you're monitoring and providing oversight to prevent a spill in the first place. That is why when I was at EPA, we put together when the World Bank provided $1 million US with an export from Mexico to come in. We put together a plan with a document with a plan with a 36-member petroleum unit at the EPA with 5 to 10 years experience, a high-powered team, 5 to 10 years experience and qualification in petroleum engineering, geological engineer, and stuff to be on the boat 24/7 to monitor to prevent these type of things. That same Minister Bharat, he dumped it. And when he was asked about it, when I brought it up, he said, "Oh, it never existed. I was dreaming this stuff." Well, of course, by whatever means, the cover of the document got put on the front page of the Kaichor News. And now we can't back off. He said, "Well, yes, oh, that document, oh, yes, we were implementing it." Where are you implementing it with this monitoring nonsense that you're talking about that is using satellite? I was When I was at the EPA, we were the ones who brought in satellite technology, but it was not for the oil industry. It was for the mining, where access was impossible to go into those mining areas. So we want to get pictures as to what is going on in the mining areas, not on the oil on the oil wells. We wanted to have our people out there 24/7. So now they're using that technology, and then he's saying, "Well, you can see anything from the sky." That's nonsense. That was one of my forte. It's called remote sensing. There's no technology to see any kind of sheen. little sheen on the ocean and that type of nonsense. The only monitoring you can have is on-site presence of knowledgeable personnel. No satellite is going to see below the cover of a ship. And by the time you see a spill, it's over. Monitoring is not to see a spill after the fact. Monitoring is to have oversight before. So that's the stupidity and nonsense that they're talking about. That trying to fool people, or it might just, I believe it's more ignorance more than anything else. Because I can tell you this, an audience, and I've said this over and over. There is not a single person at the EPA who's ever had not even an hour or a minute training in petroleum, in the petroleum field. Not a single one. I know it because I was there, and that was why I was trying to build the capacity that they pushed aside, because they do not want, they nor Exxon want anybody who is knowledgeable. So those are the kinds of dangers. And then on top of that, they're allowing Exxon to enhance the possibility of a spill by allowing them to greedily produce above the safe operating limit defined in the environmental impact assessment. They're producing almost 30% above that safe limit, and you never exceed the safe operating limit because you're putting yourself in danger. So they're enhancing the possibility of a spill, and then on the backside, they're fighting the coverage for the coverage cost for cleaning up a spill.
Covers God's Dr. Vincent Adams here tonight. Dr. Vincent Adams, thank you for coming through. We have gone over our time, and I don't want to get on the bad books of your General Secretary, Mr. Duncan. And any closing thoughts?
No, I think I know that I was a bit lengthy there, but sorry for joining a little bit late. No, but we, this whole thing, I think we covered two really good topics here. But I think the most important thing is we've got to keep calling them out with their nonsense, Dr. Hines. They're trying to fool the people, and we've got to call them out every time they try doing it. And especially this whole thing here too about this whole malnutrition stuff. This here is the future of the country that they're trying to duck and hide from even having a discussion. We've got to keep these things on the surface. Don't let them hide them, and let them face up. Let them face up to it.
Let them face up to it, Dr. Vincent Adams. Thank you very much, my brother, for coming through again tonight.
Take care. Next Friday.
Thank you. Next Friday, Dr. Vincent Adams there. And I tell you, as I said early in the program, we got to keep jamming these people. We got to keep jamming them. We cannot slip up. The ship is sinking. The ship is sinking. And if a ship is sinking, we got to push it down quicker. Good evening to all of you. I know it's Friday. Raquel Gentlo and Esther Blue and Rhonda from Denhamstel. All of you wonderful people. Thank you all for coming through tonight. I know it's the weekend. Stretch out a little and don't take your eyes off the prize, because the ship is sinking. Captain, the ship is sinking.
The ship is sinking. Captain, this is our fire. We get that pollution, we know the necessity. We all pressure we don't know. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it? And perish, Lord, we don't know. We don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Oh, oh, oh yeah. The Trinidad, in her day of sailing, she was a friend, a true friend to one and all. She never once ever hesitated to answer all SOS calls. And yes, but she always did her best to help all those in distress. Now it's so sad to see she's in difficulty. Though she have cheer, some of them cheer, and sarcastically declare, when I tell you, she was singing. What I say? Oh yeah, we got that almost we don't electricity. We all pressure we get low. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it? I'm very slow. We don't know. We don't know. Captain tell us what to do. Oh, oh,
We already abandoned ship. We already abandoned ship. See you all next week.